I really think what'll wind up needing to happen is you're going to need to put them in that position where they feel like, I shouldn't be creative. And then they need to figure out a solution, and you're not there to help them. And they are forced into creativity. You know what I mean? You have to be creative to solve this problem, or else what are you going to do? Just tell the client, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything right now. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about your company? Obviously, what you do. Obviously, I know it's a training, boarding, daycare kennel, but give me a little bit of history on yourself and your business.
So, Buddy City is the name of my school, and we have been going on for 6 years now.
6, great.
And it started because when I came to China, I was working as a designer, like a background in art. And when I came to China, I was still doing volunteer work, because I always did it back in Brazil, because I grew up there. When I moved to China, then, I want to continue working with animals, doing, either rescue related or anything, just to continue being in touch with animals.
Yeah.
And that's when I went to Buddy Dog. Buddy Dog is one of the oldest kennels here in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And they were the only ones at the time that could speak English. So I went to them and asked, hey, can I just spend time there with you guys and, either practice some training with the rescues, anything.
Yeah.
Is there something that I can do? And they say, yeah, just hop in. And I was there helping. So basically after a year or two of me just going there and getting to know the people and the kennels, then they come up with the idea of, hey, we like, working with you and everything, all the help. So would you join in to make a new school? So I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And that's how we started. Because Buddy Dog, most kennels in Shanghai, they're all far away from the city center.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, there were basically there are pet shops. But pet shops, they can only put the dogs in cages, and that's it. And they go out for walks maybe once or twice a day.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Mm-hmm.
So then we come up with Buddy City to really, increase the quality of the service, attend to our customers, and it has been doing pretty good.
So what are some of your biggest goals that you have? I know, obviously, you mentioned some things that you feel might be wrong right now, but where would you like to... what are you really looking to get out of all of this?
Here's the thing. In the beginning, this changed a lot in the past years.
Yeah.
Before it was like, I'm here just to provide a service.
Yeah.
Train dogs, do all this stuff. But then it changed because the reality is that it's very hard to change China. I don't have that goal that me, a foreigner, is going to change how Chinese people usually, the standard in China is super low.
Sure.
When I say it's low, people don't understand it. It's super low.
Yeah.
And that's something that I cannot change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. High-end Chinese people that have income, yes, they can do better,
mm-hmm.
but then the vast majority, they won't be able to.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I have been doing is every year I have new trainers coming. They come and go. Trainers come and go here in China. So what I've been trying to do is basically just give them more training in terms of the understanding of the quadrants of learning, because they only know the 2 quadrants, which is you do something that I like, I give you food.
Yeah.
You do something I don't like, I'm going to crank you up and just punish the heck out of it. So they only use these 2 quadrants.
Sure.
And I'm like, ugh. So then teaching them all the other, the conjunction of the learning has been pretty good.
Yeah.
And my expectation is basically to make sure that these trainers continue teaching the Chinese population, because actually when they come here, they know zero English. So my communication is through a translator. And I have my assistant that she translates the lessons from me to my trainers.
Yeah.
Can scratch in English, but of course they want to serve the Chinese community.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what I've been trying to keep my goal on.
So you mentioned obviously you have trainers that do a lot of the lessons and stuff, and you have a translator that helps you to be able to coach your trainers, obviously, to help get them up to a higher standard with things. Are you able to work with clients yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I did most of the training myself, and then sometimes they watch the sessions.
Yep.
Because they don't know what it is to have a customer that comes to the school once a week.
Yeah.
And try to coach the owners to continue doing improvements without the trainer going into their homes. Yep. So that's a different setting for them too.
What percentage of your clientele that comes in are you working with versus your trainers working with, would you say?
Oof. It's a big percentage, yes. Because most of my customers, they are foreigners.
Yeah.
So they prefer having someone speaking English.
Yeah.
And the goal now is to try to bring more Chinese people so that my Chinese trainers can talk to them directly.
So you would say you're working with the majority of the clients then? Is that what you're saying?
Right now, yes. Well, if it's foreigners, then yes, it's me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Life in Shanghai, it's very busy. All the foreigners, most of my customers, they come and they have their dogs and they have no time to spend with their dogs. They are working from 9 to 5, even long, like 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I say, you're having your issues because your dog is home alone. He's young. There's nothing to do. And when you're there, you're just like, hey, I'm here. And you're rushing through all the stuff with the dog.
Yeah. With all of those services, which one do you feel like is struggling the most?
Training struggles the most. Yes,
training.
Right now.
And why do you think so?
That's the one that consumes most of my time.
Yeah.
Because I cannot share it to someone else.
Yeah.
I really wish I could. I would have my Chinese trainers to deal with my customers.
Yeah.
But they would rather have the training classes with me.
Yeah, that gets challenging, right? The communication with the client arguably is the most important. A lot of times we're in these situations where it's like, all right, well, we need to figure out like how do we kind of, for better choice of words, how do we like stop the bleeding and like get to a place where we start moving in the right direction, right? We need to look at like what are our biggest areas of stress we have right now? Like what's the thing that's either taking 80% of your time, right? That's giving you the biggest headache right now. Or the thing that is just providing the least results, but taking up the most of your time. And how do we go about solving that thing? I would be focused on what do you need to do right now to make sure that first and foremost, every client that walks in your door has a really great experience, right? Early on in me having trainers working for me that I was definitely guilty of is I had a really hard time relinquishing trust, right? So like you mentioned, like they'll do the lesson and you'll kind of peek in and check the tone and stuff like that, right? And if you feel like, whatever, somebody seems like it's a little off or whatever, you'll kind of go in and get things back on track and then kind of leave them to it again, right? I think I look at myself and how I learned best to work with clients. And I think a lot of it was I was really left on my own to just kind of figure it out. Right.
And
yeah, me too. You know what I mean? Right. Like, because when you don't have that safety net of like, oh, she'll come in and help me, right? It'll be fine. Like she'll walk in a minute if I'm struggling and take over and stuff like that. They never get that true like autonomous feeling of I'm the only like I've got to figure this out on my own, right? I've got to be confident enough in my abilities. And if things start going wrong, that's where your confidence comes from. Not everything going perfectly all the time. Your confidence comes from you experiencing the hurdles, navigating them, and then coming out successful on the other end. You know what I mean? So I think there's a degree of how do we give these trainers more freedom to make these mistakes, right? And have some of those ups and downs, work through them, but still know that if they really need me, I'm there to help them, right? And it sounds like maybe, right? Like, again, I'm just taking pieces from here, pieces from there. First conversation, obviously, right? But it sounds like to me, you might also be, if you feel like they've worked through the steps of like, they know how to train the dog, right? They do relatively good with coaching the client with you there and with your direction, you could keep them on track and stuff like that. The next step is you got to take the training wheels off. Right. You are the training wheels, right? You got to remove yourself completely and say, hey, you're going to have to figure this out. Right. And if you run into a really big hurdle and need me, you can come and get me and I'll help you, but I'm not going to be watching over your shoulder to check in on stuff. Right. And I say this because like, this is something I struggled with, right? Like when I had trainers initially, I would really try to hold their hand through things, and I would really try to micromanage stuff if I felt like things were kind of going off the rails, right? And until I hit a point where I was like, all right, and I think it was one of them like finally said to me, they're like, can you like get the heck out of my lessons, like quit watching over my shoulder all the time. You know what I mean? And I did it. And that individual wound up every now and then coming to me, hey, I got a question about this dog. Hey, can you sit in on this lesson and give me your feedback on it? But it gave them a little bit more of a sense of like they were the ones making a difference, right? They were the ones engaging with the client. And that's where they really developed those people skills, I think, So if you feel like their training skills are pretty good, that might be the next step that's holding you back right now, is you're trying to hang on to too much control still and micromanage the situation a little too much.
From living in China, I try really, really, really hard not to go into the mentality of the problem is that it's China.
Sure. No, I understand.
So, yeah. So that's the part that within the 6 years working, surrounded by Chinese all the time.
Yeah.
Is that whenever I try to give them this level of freedom, what they do is nothing.
What do you mean by that?
They do stay in their comfort zone too much.
Sure.
But the reality is that for the most times in Chinese culture, they do not allow creativity. That's a cultural thing.
Sure.
There is no creativity in what they do. They just do what is told.
Yeah.
And I battled for many years that it's not possible.
Sure.
Why? But that's what made the company work.
Yeah.
Once, not when I micromanage, but then when I say, this is what has to be done.
Yeah.
These are your daily obligations.
Yeah. But I totally understand what you're saying, right? But do you see how by going into it with that mentality of like creativity is discouraged, right? We don't want you to be creative with things.
Yeah,
I right?
Feeding to the problem, yes.
Exactly, right? And we're saying, I want you to be more creative, but don't be too creative there, right? And don't make that mistake there. You know what I mean? That could kind of nurture that problem a little bit, right? So I really think what'll wind up needing to happen is you're going to need to put them in that position where they feel like, I shouldn't be creative. And then they need to figure out a solution, and you're not there to help them. And they are forced into creativity. You know what I mean? You have to be creative to solve this problem, or else what are you going to do? Just tell the client, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything right now. You know what I mean? I would trust, that you have good judgment of character of these people where they're going to be able to flourish in that environment when push comes to shove. You just need to, I think really given the cultural side of things, right? Given the climate in China, right? That you need to almost overdo the giving them the freedom to be creative, right? And that might help them to be able to flourish as better trainers and better individuals for your company.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky.
Yeah, no,
because I can't. Many times I just say, for example, daycare dogs. The daycare dogs, they come in the morning, they have their fun time. When I'm with daycare dogs, I like, what if I do a video of this, and this, or like, the dogs are super well trained. I have customers that come to me for 5 years.
Yeah,
they already know the opinions. They already know everything. So like, okay, let's be creative. Let's do some funny stuff with these dogs. But that comes from me. But then it's very hard for someone else to do the same, of course. I don't expect the same, but the same level of enthusiasm to just do something fun.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the dogs are just there, and then the guys are checking mobiles. I'm like, oh my God, no.
Yeah, no.
So that's...
And it's kind of it kind of is the same concept. So like not knowing anything about how you're operating your daycare service, but if you have really, really strict parameters on how daycare is to be ran, right? What things need to get done, right? What tasks need to be done in what particular order and stuff like that. You've got to look at all of those things as things that are also going to decrease that urge to be creative, One of the interesting things we started doing with our daycare, because we don't do like a formal daycare when it comes to like dogs are out for 12 hours together and it's a bunch of dogs together all day long and stuff like that.
No.
Yeah. we do more of like an enrichment style daycare. So we'll do like under 10 dogs a day. and they get some social time, they get some training time, they get some walking time, right? And one of the things we did when we switched to that daycare structure is all of our daycare attendants were, one of the things on their to-do list was they had to make one video of the dogs every single day, right? There was no parameters on what that video needed to be. It could be literally a picture of the dog. It could be a video of them socializing, a video of them on their walk, a video of them training, stuff like that. We just needed to showcase them on social media at some point that day, right? And because we didn't have too strict of parameters on it, they started kind of having fun with it. You know, they would post quirky little videos of if they noticed the dog was doing something funny in daycare, or, you know, they would start getting creative with taking the dogs for pack walks as opposed to individual walks and post videos of that, or they would do training exercises with the dogs together, and they would just kind of have fun with it, right? And over time, it wasn't immediate, but that creativity started to shine through with it as they kind of felt a little bit more of a sense of purpose around showcasing the dog having a good time in their care. You know what I mean? So I would be looking for ways to assign tasks that don't have parameters on them, right? As far as like, you know, it's a very loose task, right? That allows them, but you get what I'm saying, right? It allows them to like, all right, well, you have to get this thing done. It could be done in any number of ways you want to get it done. It just needs to get done, right? And then from there, they could practice that creativity by getting it done in whatever day or in whatever way that they think that it should get done, right? And things like that might help you as well. You know, that way things like if you want to get some pictures of your daycare dogs, it's like, all right, well, make that a task every day as we get some sort of content of these dogs while they're here, you know? And that'll help with your marketing side of things as well.
So whenever you're ready, I told him I'll call him.
Got it.
And then when you think he's ready for him to come in.
Yeah. So he doesn't like you a whole lot?
No, the first time he was full blown, like sprinting at me, like trying to rip my head off.
He wanted some blood.
Yeah, 100%.
Gotcha.
Since then, at least like he can like walk by me and just like be pretty chill.
Understood.
No. Louie, place. Place.
So this is kind of pretty normal.
Yeah, usually we keep him in the crate. He has
Yep.
the crate back there.
Gotcha.
And so crate used to be there.
Yep.
He would go nuts in the crate.
Yeah.
And when we moved it there, people don't even know he's here until they hear him snoring.
Really?
Yeah.
So he doesn't do anything when he's in the crate. He's fine.
If he was in the crate and you went like this,
Peeked over.
yeah,
Yeah, I gotcha.
he would get no crate.
Okay. Well, that wasn't too bad. So right there, was that all the way up that you corrected him at, or
66.
66?
I
Okay.
actually thought it was at 75. That's what I had.
Yeah.
the other day.
Well, let's go ahead and bump it up a little more. You can go up to like 80, 90, somewhere around there. But that seemed, I mean, he seemed responsive to that. That was fine.
Okay.
So we'll let him hang out there for a minute, kind of let him settle, and then what I'll do is I'll kind of start walking around.
Okay.
And I want to see as I walk around if,
What he does.
you know, what he does. So you said generally you don't do this. He's just in the crate when people come over.
Right. After the training, we were trying this.
Yep.
And then like I just gave up, and so put him in the crate. We had company.
Yeah. Now, was the reason why you gave up, was it worse than this? Is that why? Because this seems all right so far. Or was it that he would chill and then like 20 minutes later he'd do it again? Or
It was just that when people initially came and then he was barking at them,
Yeah.
it just felt like uncomfortable.
I understand.
And so we're like, you know what, we're having someone over, put him in the crate, and
Yeah.
we just walk in. Maybe some laziness on my part.
No, I understand. That's okay. So was it harder? Because like right there, that was easy. I mean, he started doing it, you corrected him, he went right back on, you know?
Yeah.
Is it generally a little harder than that?
It's a good question. It's been a while since we tried it out.
Sure.
I think it might depend on who.
I understand.
Who, like,
Yep.
somebody has a hat on or how tall they are sometimes.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, he's usually not like constantly.
Yeah.
Like a constant
Yeah.
a fight to get him in the crate. It's usually a bit initial bark,
Yeah,
initial like kind of alertness.
sure.
And I'm glad he did it. I didn't think he was gonna do it when he came in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, he still doesn't really know me, so, you know, I would expect nonetheless. So that wasn't too bad right there. What were you going to say, though? Sorry.
When Justin is here,
Yes.
I have an older daughter. He'll be here for I don't know, an hour, half an hour, and
Yeah.
then we'll bring him out on a leash, and he'll be cool. He won't do any barking or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the fact that he smelled them, know his voice.
Yeah, it could be definitely. Now, When you bring him out on a leash, do you usually just kind of let him free roam on the leash?
No, hold him.
You hold him? Do you put him in command?
Usually down, wherever I'm at, like free down.
Yeah, sure.
Or if I'm sitting up, I have a chair here, I put him in place. But I'm too nervous.
Yeah.
Let him free.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Well, so here's the thing, right? So there's not a whole lot you're going to do initially that's going to make it necessarily easy. You know what I mean? But generally speaking, what we try to do with, we'll just pick one issue at a time here. So the issue of guests coming over is we take it in stages. So you've essentially gone total management, right? Which is fine, right? Keeping them in the crate, you're keeping them successful in there. At least you're minimizing the reactions, stuff like that. But in his mind, he knows that crate's holding him in there. You know what I mean? Like that's, he might freak out a little bit if somebody like peeks around the corner, but in the end of the day, like even if he wanted to run over at somebody, like he couldn't actually do it, right? And he's going to be aware of that, right? So we move from total management to management with training, which helps put the dog into a little bit more compliant of a state of mind. That's where place comes into play, right? Or bed stays or whatever it may be. And generally speaking, we'll implement like a 2-month period of time or something excessive like that, where anytime somebody comes over, he's out, but he's on place the entire time they're there, right? And we want to simulate in his mind 2 things. One, this is basically the same thing as his crate, right? That's your safe spot. Nobody is going to mess with you when you're on that bed, right? So that's why he's so calm in the crate. He knows when he's in there, nobody's going to mess with him, right? And then the second thing is you get the added benefit of him practicing impulse control the entire time, right?
Okay.
Like there's nothing holding him back from realistically getting up off of the place aside from himself, right? So it helps shift the state of mind from, he's not doing any of the work to he's doing 50% of the work, right? So we do that until that's like effortless for him. Until like this state of mind, like right now, how he's just literally chilling. He's not even looking at me anymore. He's put his head down. He's like, all right, he's here. Dad's gonna make me stay on this place right now, right? And again, he might in a minute get up again, like if he gets wigged out by the camera or something like that, and if he did, we would just correct him and put him back on. But we want to get to a place where that's like the default. People come over and he's just as chill, like he's snoring over there, snoozing just like he would be in the crate, right? Once we've achieved that goal, and that's the longest stretch, right? That's like I said, I do like months of that, like 2-3 months, right? However long, that you're comfortable doing it for. Then the following step would be we do the place for the first like 15 to 20 minutes that people are here. Then we move from place to free roaming. But with the free roaming, obviously because your nerves are going to be really high, we would just use a muzzle for it, right? And we put him in a position where he actually can move around and interact with people. But obviously, we're keeping a degree of safety on. So that's kind of what we're going to do today is we're going to obviously speed through those 3 steps, and I'll kind of show you how I would go about doing all of those things. Then once we finish that, what we'll do is we'll do the dog stuff and kind of see what we get with it.
Okay.
So let's do this. I'm going to have you hang out there. First, I want to just test them by walking around a little bit. I'm going to have you walk over there.
Okay.
That way, as I'm walking by, if you were to try to run off the bed towards me, you could stop him easily, obviously. So I'm just going to hang out, walk around a little bit here. So what are you doing in my house? Hi, bud. Oh, we get a little tail wag? Is that because you're happy or you want to come and bite me? Now, generally speaking, I wouldn't be having my guests like hard stare at dogs or anything like that, but I want to kind of just gauge him here and see what he's going to do ultimately. What do you think, dude? Hi? Hello? So that seems pretty good, Is he generally pretty good about wearing his muzzle?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And is that it hanging up right over there?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Perfect. So I'll grab that for you here. And then we're going to have Justin come on in then next. So we're going to do the exact same thing. I just want to see you keep him on the bed there.
Yeah, okay.
If he gets off, correct him, put him back on. We'll just all kind of hang out in here for a minute or so. Then what we'll do is we'll pop the muzzle on him, and then we'll kind of give him a little bit of freedom and see what we get. Yeah, come on in. Come have a seat, hang out. Just ignore him.
No. Louie place.
Okay, so right there, what mistake did you make?
I backed up.
No. He didn't make the mistake yet.
Oh, so him getting up is okay?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. The expectation with place is just be on the place board.
Okay.
So wait until he actually steps off. Now, it's not like terribly wrong, you know what I mean? Like some people will do like a down on the place, but we're gonna keep the expectation as simple as possible right now. Just be on the place board, right? And actually, if anything, he seemed excited to see you there. You know, that wasn't anything aggressive or anything like that. So, perfect, but this looks good. So we'll just kind of hang out for a minute or so, and then like I said, what we'll do is I'll have you pop that muzzle on him, and then we'll release him off and see what we get.
Not move, so maybe
Sure.
his personality, if they have personalities,
Like I said,
it's not working for him.
it's not wrong, right? The problem is if we're going to look at something that's like really intense, right? So reactivity or you know, aggression towards people coming over or whatever, keeping himself under control in the presence of those triggers is going to be extremely challenging. So the more rigid we make our criteria, the harder it is for him to be successful. You know what I mean? So you could, like I said, it's not wrong to ask him to lay down on the bed by any means, right? But it's going to be easier for him to be successful by just being on the bed, where if he gets up because he's a little excited, as long as he stays on there, it's totally cool, right?
If he got up in a happy mood, but got off, that's
Yeah.
wrong, right?
Yeah, I don't care if he's stepping off of it because he's happy or because he's acting aggressively. He's not allowed to step off of it still. But yeah, it kind of gives him a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt with that.
Good.
All right, so let's do this. Let me take the remote from you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm going to have you can unclip the leash, then just tell him okay and release him off. Or tell him break or whatever command it is you use for that.
Louie, okay.
And then we'll just let him hang out here now. Now, just totally ignore him. If he comes up to you or anything, don't pet him or interact with him or anything. I just want to see what he does now that he's free to kind of make his own choices. So this is phase number 2, right? So we've established our control around the trigger. Now what we're doing is we're releasing him to do whatever it is he wants to do aside from things we determined. So at this stage, I would say when guests are over, I wouldn't probably let him get up on the couch, right? If you were to try to jump or anything like that or act aggressively, I would correct him for any of those things. But outside of that, he could just kind of hang out and do his thing at this point. So you do whatever it is you want to do. Yeah, at this stage, we're kind of just acting normal here.
Okay, let's do this off.
Yeah, sure. And you can tell he's a little confused. He's like, wait, am I free? Can I get up? Can I move around?
Louie, okay.
Now, let's say you run into that situation like we did right there, where he got up and he was a little confused if he could move or not. I actually would prefer that you don't release him again in that moment. Let him organically figure out that he could start moving, right? Because sometimes if we go overboard on the okay, we create all this energy and we can create a problem, you know? If anything, I want him kind of staying a little cautious of making the right choice.
I don't think we've ever had the muzzle on at home like this. Like
Sure.
this for no reason.
Yeah, and sometimes the muzzle is more for us than it is for the dog. You know what I mean? Like if you guys have had a lot of bad experiences with him at this point, it's like, you know, well, just to make sure, just in case, you know, nothing bad actually happens, it could allow you to actually get past that because you kind of plateaued off. You know what I mean? You've made a lot of progress with him, right? But you've plateaued off as far as how much progress you're making because of that insecurity of like what might happen, you know? So the muzzle helps you get past that next hurdle with things. Because this is really the next step is we got to get back to that like Louie that used to like interacting with everybody and playing with everybody and stuff, but we got to do it safely. So this is great. Why don't you go ahead and come on over there, and I want you to go just sit on the couch for a minute. Don't worry about him. If he follows you, great. If he doesn't, no big deal. I just want to see if he tries to do anything once he's over here. Now, the other big thing that you could run into sometimes with dogs like him is if we do too much confinement, too much place, too much down, stuff like that.
Yeah.
If these behaviors are coming from an insecure place, you kind of take away the option of flight. You know what I mean? Where if he's nervous of you, for example, if he's constantly only ever held in one spot and can't move away or get away or anything like that, he's gonna be more likely to react. Where now that he's free, if he started getting stressed out by you, realistically, he can go all the way into the kitchen if he wants to, give himself space and get comfortable. So the next thing we're going to do is we would move to then the next stage of this, which is interaction, right? Now, I always tell all my guests that come over, you're allowed to interact with my dog under one rule. We have to essentially ask for a degree of consent out of the dog with it, as opposed to just like, I'm coming to pet you right now, because that's where a lot of bad things tend to happen. So in a minute, I'm going to have you try to pet him. I'll show you what to do first, obviously. And your rules, you're just going to try to call him over to you. Be really informal about it. We're not giving like a formal command or anything like that. And if he comes over, heck yeah, you can interact with him, play with him, do whatever it is you want to do. If he doesn't, if he kind of looks at you and says, I'm uncomfortable with this right now still, you got to respect that, right? So we're not putting him in a position where he's going to need to react to defend himself, because we're kind of giving him an option with it.
Okay.
Louie, come here, bud. And obviously while I'm doing it initially, I'm going to try to avoid like hard eye contact or things like that, you know? And I'm also not going to, notice right there, I pet him, but I didn't try to like hold him with me or anything like that. If he wants to move away, totally fine. Hey, hi bud, Louie. You said, where's my toys? Louie. Come here, bud. There you go. Right, and then the other side of things then is going to be, you want to keep these interactions short and sweet, right? So realistically, let's say for the next month or two, as you start doing some of these interactions, like let's say with you, for example, we'll start as you being the guinea pig with this. You know, do this for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, then put him in the crate. Just let him chill, you know? Cool. So if you want, go ahead and try to call him over to you and just kind of hang out with him for a minute.
Louie.
Nice. And very good body language. I mean, you know, he seems comfortable right now, which is good.
He's trying to, I don't know if he's trying to get that. When he gets happy, he does a lot of shaking.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's wanting off now.
There's always a degree of, with any dog, no matter how comfortable they are with the muzzle, they want to kind of rub that thing against everything and try to get it off. So, Louie, good job, buddy. Good job.
What did you call this last time about like him engaging and saying like it's okay to? You talked about with the socialization with the dogs, like you know, a reward or like there's a positive aspect of.
Yeah, I mean, we're giving him the ability to interact, right? I mean, he needs to build positive associations with interacting with his triggers, right? But we have to make sure we've established a degree of control first, which is why the place is, like if you just went into this, but we were never able to reel him back in, it's like you're setting yourself up for failure with it, right? Or if we start off with like place for, like I said, like 20 minutes when you first come over or something, where it's controlled, we're telling him, hey, don't worry about him right now, focus on me, focus on what I'm asking you to do. Then after that, this is kind of like the reward for doing a good job with that. But this is great. And, you know, just do it with the muzzle on until you feel like 100% confident in him. Because let's say you never move past muzzle, right? And let's say when people come over, you could have them out, but you feel more comfortable with the muzzle on. Like, that's fine. You know, like I don't know how often you're having like strangers come over the house, but it's like, you know, even if it's once a week, it's like it's really not that big of a deal. And like I said, less is more with this kind of stuff, right? Don't feel like you have to do this every single time somebody comes over the house. But like if you're here regularly, like I said, start with one person. Like let's get him developing a good relationship with one new person, right? And then move on to another new person, then move on to another new person, and just keep him successful with it, you know? So right now, kind of the instructions with this are, again, when people come over the house, 15 minutes on place, right? Wait until he's totally chill, pop the muzzle on, take the leash off, let him be free. Do that for 30, 45 minutes, then put him away. Right, and we'll start with that as your initial thing that you could do with this. But this is awesome.
Louie, down. No.
So I'm going to treat this the same way as we did last time. So any like forward movement towards the dog, that's what I'm going to correct for. So I'm not going to wait until he starts exploding. It's when he starts engaging, that's what I'm going to correct for. No. Hey. Stop. Good. Perfect. Yeah, it's for some dogs, it's unbelievably effective, you know? It's just like what it's unfortunate because it's like it's the last tool in our toolbox just because it's like you don't want to be like walking around the street throwing stuff at your dog, you know?
Typically, we still be going nuts. Like,
Yeah.
Distance, you pull at me, I be trying
Yeah,
to get away.
but notice my first step is I identified the mistake right when he did it wrong. I kind of caught him with the leash just to manage so he wasn't at the end of the leash all jerking around all over the place. Then I gave my correction, right? Good job, buddy. Yeah, in a second here, you guys. So then obviously once you've stopped the behavior, our next step is rewarding for engagement, right? So basically at this stage, if he does anything other than pay too much attention to those dogs, I could start rewarding. Good. And again, right now he's not in command, so him drifting off or anything is fine. The only thing I care about right now is that he's not reacting. Good. 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 And just like with our no marker, I'm marking with good, then I'm delivering the reward here. Good. Good. And again, like we saw last time, shifting his body language away from the dog, that's kind of what we want to see here. Good. 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 Get a couple more of those.
No.
And notice that? Perfect, right? He thought about it, checked right back in with me, no correction needed. Good. Those squirrels like to taunt you.
Yeah.
Good.
Fourth party has entered the game.
Yeah.
I see you. Helps them to.
Yeah.
Then when they see him, they won't react. Hey,
Good.
boy.
Good. 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 Notice I'm short on the leash, but I'm loose on it, right? I'm ready to catch him if I need to, obviously, but I want to make sure that he's not feeling any tension. Good.
In it.
That's the hound in her.
Yeah, she's a little beagle. Come on.
I'll take just a couple more, yeah. Now, early on in this, I keep the reward frequency pretty high, especially if he's doing a good job. Because what we're doing is we're counteracting the stress of the corrections with the rewards. You know what I mean? Good. Once he starts loosening up with it, you don't have to give as many of them.
They sound like some bull.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys.
No problem.
Good.
Thanks to
No problem. Not a problem at all.
He said, man, I'm tired. So beautiful. So that's obviously how it goes. And sometimes it's helpful if, like, before you go out and try to practice it too, like in the real world, like if you could set that up again with them a couple times, like yourself, just to get some successful reps in before you're like randomly one dog is passing by and you miss your opportunity and stuff like that, you know?
these guys are friendly.
Oh yeah, look at this guy. Just chilling.
Dang, I took him in the street because I was remembering he said just try to give
Yeah.
victories.
Keep them successful. This seems good. Good job, buddy.
Hey, Doug.
I think right now the biggest things I'd like to see you do is I want to see you start developing some positive associations in the house, right? Following that routine of the place for 20 minutes, putting the muzzle on, releasing him to let him hang out, 45 minutes or so, then put him away. Start with that. And then outside of the house, the treats and the bonker, right? Counteract, obviously correct. And when you correct, like make it count, right? Get it done. And then heavy rewards after to kind of counteract that and get them kind of comfortable with it. And I would recommend probably if you could over the next couple days set up a couple of times where you could work with the neighbors, that might be helpful just so you could kind of focus on what you're doing and not need to worry about like, it's some random person walking down the street,
Okay. I might be thinking too much, but is the idea that he respects the milk more than he wants to attack? Like whatever he...
Well, that's a good question. The idea is that we're creating an inhibition for an unwanted behavior. So it's not even so much about respecting, like obviously the no, we want to have value, and the reason why I only needed to correct him twice out there, and the second one you'll notice, like as soon as I said no, he stopped, because he knew it was coming. So we want him to respect the no, obviously, but like we don't want to have to say no in the first place. We want him to just not make the mistake, right? So yeah, you're kind of charging it and giving it its value, which is the importance of making sure that marker comes prior to any punishment, or that marker comes prior to any reward in the case of the positive reinforcement, right? But ultimately we want the behavior to just go away. If it's just you guys hanging out, honestly, I want the dogs in command as little as possible. Like if my wife is at home all day, or if I'm working from home one day or something like that, we'll generally go the whole day without asking a single command out of our dogs, because I want them to be free to make their choices like he is right now, and then I want to just address the things I don't want him to do. So if he was to jump, or he was going to try to get into something, or any of those types of things, I want to stop those things and tell him you do anything you want to do except that.
Okay. I think I was under the impression that we had to have like total control.
It's more so for you than it is for him, right? It's helping take away options for the dog so that he could be a little bit more respectful of you, and it's giving you a lot of places to practice it, right? But long term, I always say, like, big picture, my goal with my dogs, and the goal that I always try to get my clients to have as well, is to like have the dog just be able to do what they want to do and just make the correct choice.
It doesn't have to be constantly regimented.
Yeah, I would start giving him more freedom and just being much more firm on him of when you give him the freedom, if he acts out or makes incorrect choices, correcting those things. And you really shouldn't need to use it that much. You know, it really should, like, you get like the walk under control like we just did, and then in a lot of cases, like just carrying it with you on your walks is enough, you know? And then maybe you need to use it once or twice when he starts freaking out at the window at something.
Yeah.
And same concept, you get it under control and then you're kind of past it.
Before we pet him,
Yeah.
do we give him a command?
So when it's just the immediate family who he's good with, you don't have to overthink that stuff.
Okay.
Right? Obviously, make sure he's not dictating every interaction, like he's the one coming over, like butting your head or his head in your hand and stuff like that, right? Try to make sure that's not happening. But outside of that, just hang out with him, enjoy him, you know? It's more important when you have new people over the house that we're being very, very controlled about the interactions at that point. And generally speaking, like if I have guests come over the house and my dogs are out, I'm not interacting with my dogs a whole lot, right? If the guests want to, they can. If they follow that rule, like I said, if they got to call him over, if he comes over, great. If he doesn't, you got to leave him alone. But I'm just kind of supervising. You know, I'm playing lifeguard in that moment. Again, you know, with rules still, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta start just trusting him and giving him a little bit more freedom. You know, because sometimes you take away all the freedom and you never give it back, and it just builds like resentment, like out of they're just like, God, what the heck, you know, like. Yeah, it's like I can't do anything, you know? Keep them successful, you know what I mean? Just kind of make that the new norm. Like you've had your norm of what you've done for the last like year or so now. Make this the new norm you do like indefinitely right now. And then later down the road, you know what I mean? If he's doing fantastic with all of it, you could do more things with them. If we want to move another step down the road, we could do that then. But we're just kind of recalibrating the expectations a little bit here. Welcome to another episode of DogVlog, episode 17,042. Today we're here with Tucker, and we're going to do some training because we don't do a lot of stuff like this anymore. We primarily just do lessons at Page Films. All right, so we're going to do some training here. So we got Tucker here right now. Tucker is a little bit of a scaredy cat boy. He's gaining confidence every day, but he could be a little bit of a WIMP sometimes, as you can see by the fearfulness to noises and stuff like that. So we're going to just do a session with him today, and I want to talk about some kind of concepts that go through my head when I take a dog out for training, especially if it's a dog that I haven't personally done a ridiculous amount of training with myself, right? And a couple of those concepts are, first and foremost, I want to assess baseline where the dog is at with things without the need of a whole ton of reinforcement. So I actually took his remote and I set it over there, right? I want to work him and I want to see how much willingness to work there is for me, how much engagement there is with me just kind of organically. Additionally, I'm going to be picking one thing to work on at a time with him. I think this is a common theme that I've seen over the last couple of months as I've been working with people virtually, as I've been working with trainers, as I've been working with dogs myself, is that a lot of people get really hung up on like a routine with dogs, meaning they want to have the picture of the bed stay, then the recall, then the down stay, then the following, and this and that. And they want to kind of like show off all the things the dog knows, where if you really look at like what is the best way for a dog to learn, breaking things down into extremely micro pieces and honing in on those pieces until you have as close to perfection as you can get can be extremely, extremely, extremely beneficial. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one command at a time here, and we're going to start working those commands, and we're going to kind of see what we get with stuff. So first thing I want to do here is we're going to work some bed stays. So I'm going to walk over here. Tucker, bed. I'm going to give that bed command. Beautiful. And obviously he did pretty well with that. And then once he kind of stabilizes, stops sniffing around, stuff like that, what I'm going to do, once I see he's committed to the position, obviously, what I'm going to do is walk away, leave him there for a minute, and then we're going to work some repetitions of that to start here. Now, he doesn't have to stop sniffing. You know, sniffing is not like an expectation on the bed. The expectation is simply have 4 paws on. But a lot of times I like to wait until they commit to the position like that and are clear in, okay, I'm in a bed stay and I have to stay here before I walk away, so I don't create too much confusion of him ultimately wanting to get up and start following me, or he's still a little distracted and isn't solidified in what it is that I asked him to do. So we'll let him chill there for a second. Beautiful. Good job, buddy. Okay. Then I can release him off, let him hang out, and then we'll do a couple reps of that. Tucker, bed. Good. Again, waiting for commitment, which we've got. Walking away. Okay. We'll do that a few times here. Tucker, bed. Now, I don't mind that he's kind of going to the bed before I ask him to. We're kind of also, by picking one thing at a time, allowing the dog to really get into almost an autopilot state of mind where it's making it easier for them to be successful with it. And each repetition that they do, they gain more and more confidence in the thing it is that we're asking them to do, right? Let's say I was working with him and he was struggling to get onto the bed. A lot of people will make the mistake of as soon as they get one repetition of success, they either end the session or what they'll do is they'll then move into something else, which is the worst thing you could do because essentially you had 95% confusion in that session and 5% clarity at the very end, where we want to make sure the session ends where we're at a place where it's more even as far as maybe if it really was a rough session, we had 50% clarity and 50% confusion. And we always end with the dog becoming more and more and more confident in that thing we're asking them to do. Okay, good job, bud. So we'll do a couple of these. Bed. Now, additionally, again, I told you the e-collar remote is over there. Sometimes I think for trainers, every now and then, even very experienced trainers, even myself, even any of our trainers here, I think it's really important sometimes to get that remote out of your hand, right? Or if you're doing food training, get the treats off of your person, right? Don't be so dependent on these tools that you're doing and just focus on your communication. Because anytime you have those things easily accessible, your brain's always going to be thinking, I gotta have my hand ready on the button, I gotta have my hand ready in the pouch, things like that. And you're always going to be clouding all of the information you're giving, and you're going to get them dependent in some cases on seeing the remote, seeing the treat pouch, things like that. If I desperately need to give a correction for something, if he for whatever reason starts really blowing me off, I could use my markers to identify those mistakes and then go get my remote and back it off without ever needing it on my actual person. Okay, so I'll do 2 more of these here. Bed. Good. Okay. Good job, buddy. And obviously with the okay, he's free. He keeps going over to page there. Totally fine. Tucker, bed. Good. Okay. Good job, buddy. Good job. Awesome. So we'll give him a second here, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to shift into another command, right? So if you're going through your session, you work one thing repeatedly, he does fine with it, we had essentially 100% clarity in that, then we could start shifting the expectation of him a little bit. So what I'm going to do is some down stays next. Tucker, down. So giving that down command. Giving him plenty of time to work his way into the position. I always tell everybody speed is not the expectation when you're working with dogs. As long as I see that he's actively moving in the direction of doing the correct thing, that's all that I care about with this. Good. And notice when I said good, he started jumping the gun a little bit there. So sometimes adding in some periodic praise, adding in a good marker, things like that, just to make sure he is listening for the information that we're saying can be very important. Now, I didn't correct or anything there. I didn't have to tell him no because ultimately he fixed himself before he actively made the mistake. But you could tell he was thinking about it there. Okay. So we'll do that again. Tucker down. Good. Good. So testing that again, given that he was a little jumpy with it last time, much more stable there. Okay. So some of this comes down to breaking patterns as well, right? Obviously, we want them to get into a little bit of an autopilot state of mind as far as being eager to do the right thing. But with things like the release, if you're ever only releasing in one way, the dog is going to start anticipating that eventually. So an example of that, down. Good. So an example of that would be, we talk a lot about not releasing the dog too much from afar, meaning when he's in a down, being all the way over here and going, okay, good job, buddy. And the reason for that has everything to do with, if I do that the majority of the time, I'm going to start patterning in the dog to start guessing that no matter where I'm at in the room, get ready to be released because I might be releasing you at some point. If we try to make sure that 90% of the time, Tucker, down. Good. If I make sure that 90% of the time I'm going back to him and releasing him, then anytime I'm away from him, he's not going to be guessing so much and so jumpy on that release, which will, serve yourself many, many purposes. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you have your dog in a down stay over there, and I say okay in conversation, he's not going to be just jumping the gun all the time and guessing that that's for him. So you could do it every now and then. Sometimes it's fun to put your dog in a downstay and walk all the way across a field and release him to you with a ton of energy. But you want to make sure that's not the majority of the time. Okay, good job, bud. Down. Good. Good. Same with the praise, making sure that we're keeping it calm. I'm not like, oh my God, getting him all amped up and stuff. The praise I'm giving him, downward strokes like that, right? Making sure I'm reinforcing the position that it is that he's in. Okay. Very good. So the downs look great. So what we're going to do next is we're going to work our off-leash heeling, which is our come command. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell him, Tucker, come. I'm going to start walking, and I want to see him stay with me as I walk. Do a couple easy laps around the room here. Coming to a stop. Good job, bud. Now he's sat. He doesn't need to sit. He just needs to stop with me. The expectation of the come command is just staying in our bubble. Okay. I'll let him hang out for a second, and then we'll do that again. Tucker, come. Now, Tucker here is not the most food-motivated dog in the world. We use some treats here and there with him, and he's responsive to it. No, come. So predominantly, a lot of his training was done with a pinch collar, with an e-collar, things like that. And I always tell everybody, again, the importance of me not having that remote on my person, is that anytime we're doing training, we're using aversives, we're using rewards, things like that, we want to be able to hit a point where the dog is compliant and listening and performing these commands without the need of the constant reinforcement. Now, having the e-collar on is one thing, right? It's no different than putting a seatbelt on when you get in the car, right? We have it to be able to give a correction if need be. But ultimately, we don't want to have to be actively hitting that button all the time. If you find yourself needing to correct repeatedly, like so far this entire session, I had to tell him no one time, which was right there a minute ago. And we've been working now for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that, right? So he's showing me that he has a clear understanding of all of this. He has a clear understanding of performing these commands to avoid consequence or access reward because he's not needing constant reinforcement because he's fluent in this. And that's what we're looking for as we near the end of our training program. We shouldn't be prompting with e-collar when we're giving commands. We shouldn't need to correct every time we ask a command, things like that. We want to make sure the dog is being clear in what it is we're asking them to do. Tucker, come. Tucker, come. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. No. Tucker, come. Good job, buddy. Nice. Tucker, come. Tucker, come. So as we're working these individual commands and we're showing the dog different pictures every time you do it, you'll start finding where the holes are, right? So bed stays, fine. Didn't give me any issue with that. Down stays, fine. Didn't give me any issue with that. Walking in here with him, fine. Didn't give me any issues with that. Walking through the hallway with distractions, did okay, but on those stops at doorways, you could tell he was unsure in the expectation, and that's not because of corrections or anything. He was just like, wait a minute, I'm at this doorway. Doorways create a lot of arousal sometimes for me, but I think I'm supposed to stay with this guy, but it wasn't as smooth as we wanted to see. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep working through that. And again, I'm not needing to be super hard on him by any means. I just need to give good direction in communicating where the boundaries are at. So we're gonna do that again. Tucker, come. You see the confusion, right? Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. Now you see he started making the mistake, but he fixed himself. So the last repetition, he did the same thing, but the opposite. He was like, wait, I think I'm supposed to be away from this doorway. He started backing up that way, marked with no. He fixed himself. This time he overcompensated in the other direction. So again, setting the boundary here. It's not intentionally being disobedient, right? But he's trying to figure out what is the expectation in this exact moment, and it's my job just to guide him through that. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. So we're going to work that one more time here with him. Good job, buddy. Good job. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. So coming out, much smoother every repetition. You can come by if you need to, Kevin. Much smoother every repetition there, not as so much back and forth or kind of, dilly-dallying around or anything like that. We'll see how going back in is now. Tucker, come. Good job, buddy. Much better. Tucker, come. No. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. We're going to try that one more time here. So you see each repetition so far better and better and better, more and more clear. Good job, bud. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. Good. Tucker, come. What's up? Good. You can go by. Now, little day-to-day distractions like that, people walking by while the dog is in command, we need for those things to happen to continue changing the picture, obviously. And you see he's doing great with it. Tucker, come. Good job, buddy. Tucker, come. Nice. Tucker, come. Bed. Good. And again, like we talked about, wanting to end on success. We had some confusion, which is why we kept drilling that. If this were a real session, we would probably do 4 or 5 more repetitions of that to really keep ingraining this in his head, obviously. But again, notice, no corrections needed for any of that. So now listen again. I'm not telling everybody, like, don't give your dog corrections, things like that. But I think an important thing for us to always look at when we're trainers is the dog being disobedient or are they confused? And I would say 9 out of 10 times the dog is confused and does not need a ton of motivation past very low levels on the e-collar to help the dog kind of work past some of those things. You know, if you work the dog kind of in this fashion, sometimes you'll probably find the times that you need to actually give more firm punishments for things is probably a lot lower than you think, you know? And when you do give it, you'll notice that he'll likely be much, much more responsive to it because you helped him overcome some of the confusion first, right? So, cool little session there. Like I said, doing really great so far. I haven't personally done a ton of training with Tucker before, so I think he's working really great with the new handler and stuff. And we'll keep him moving along with things, so. Okay, good job, buddy. Never really done like a formal treadmill training thing, you know, where we've kind of talked about it, went over different ways to do it, stuff like that. So I was thinking about it the other day, and I wanted to just kind of take today and kind of go over, at least the way that I've done it before. You know, everybody's going to have their spin on it, obviously. But this is kind of a way that I think, you know, I've coached some people through before that I think is kind of nice and step by step as far as kind of getting the dog acclimated to it, right? What are you doing, buddy? So what we're going to do is we'll use Johnny Cash here, and we'll kind of break down the steps and kind of discuss overall kind of where I think like the biggest hurdles are with treadmill training and why I kind of sequence things out the way that I do, right? So first things first, obviously anytime we're introducing a new object, right, whether it's a bed, whether it's a treadmill, whether it's getting in a car, whatever, obviously we want to make sure we could just check the box of getting the dog onto the surface first. So I'm going to treat this just like I would a bed, right? And I'm not going to have it turned on or anything. I'm just going to kind of walk him over it a couple times. Just using leash pressure, obviously, to get him stepping on it. I don't care if he stays on it or anything like that. I just want to see him get onto it, get off of it, get onto it, get off of it, stuff like that. Just kind of getting him comfortable with it. Kind of want to neutralize it more than anything before we're going to create any sort of like expectation surrounding it. I will say I like these like dog treadmills, but the one thing that I don't particularly like about them is how narrow they are, you know? With like a real treadmill that's wider and like made for people, I feel like they could stay on it a little bit more easily, you know, when they're in the early stages of things because there's more surface area. If they get on sideways, all of their paws are generally still going to be on it, you know? So again, just getting them on it, letting them hang out, letting them check it out, all that good stuff. We'll do that a couple more times here. Good job, buddy. So step number 2, once they're smoothly through that side of things, is I'm going to get them to get on it and stay on it just using the leash here. So I'll get them on. Want to see all 4 paws on. I'm just going to let him hang out for a minute. Now I'm not going to be super crazy about like what direction he's facing or anything like that. Obviously once it starts moving, that will organically shift him in the direction that I want him to be. So I'm not super concerned about that there. But if he steps off, I will use that leash just to get him back on. And once he's stable on it, okay, I'll release him off. Shot, bud. Okay. Beautiful. So step 3 here is we're going to repeat step 1 and 2, but with the treadmill running at the lowest speed. Now I think where a lot of people make mistakes with treadmill training, at least what I've seen with like owners and stuff, is that they try to go right from where we were just at to then getting the dog on and turning it on when they're on. Or if you look at the hardest part for dogs when you're doing the treadmill training, it's getting them used to walking onto a moving surface, right? So by reducing the criteria back to, I don't even give a shit if you get all the way on it, just start getting your paws used to getting on this thing that's moving. I think you could sidestep a lot of the stress associated with it. So same deal, just getting them on, letting them walk right off, getting them on, letting them walk off, and I'm just going to do this a bunch of times here until he seems pretty comfortable with it. Usually stepping over and just kind of walking over it this way is pretty easy as well, as opposed to getting them to walk like directly onto it. I think you could do it, but I think it's a little harder sometimes for them. Good job, bud. Yeah, right? And you see how, like, again, I'm not making him stay on this, but he's getting used to the he's getting used to the concept of getting his paws moving, obviously, on this thing, right? Because if he waits, he's going to fall off the back of it, right? Yeah. And sometimes early on, like, you'll find something like that will happen. They might get a little spooked with it, which is why, again, our criteria is so low right now, where it's very difficult for him to, like, truly fail at this. So we'll do a couple more. And this is generally where I'm going to spend the large bulk of my time in the treadmill training process, is this. Because usually on their own, they'll start staying on it for more and more extended periods because they realize, just like with like a bed stay or something, that I'm just going to keep putting you back on the thing. Good job, bud. Nice. Good job, dude. We're just kind of getting him acclimated to it. He's allowed to step off right now because I haven't made my criteria. You got to stay on it yet. Good job, buddy. Yeah, so my next criteria here I'm going to start adding is I want him to actually stay on it. And this is where I'm going to actively use the leash to enforce where the boundaries are, right? So he's allowed to go anywhere he wants on this aside from actively step off of it. Johnny Cash, have you been on a treadmill before? You're doing so good. Again, just basic pressure and release to get him on and off of it. And obviously at this stage, like, you kind of just use like some body blocking, like just keep him successful with it, you know? The way I look at it is like with treadmill training, especially initially for dogs, like it's a very weird concept, you know? So I want to give them enough time to kind of figure it out and get into a rhythm with it and make mistakes and just kind of guide them through it more than anything. And then the other thing too is kind of when you're at this stage and things where like he's doing relatively well with it, but he's making some mistakes. Another thing that occasionally will hold dogs back also is the speed, right? So I think sometimes actually if it's too slow, it could be even more awkward for them to do it. So occasionally what I'll do, like if I'm at this stage where he's turning a lot and stuff, I'll bump the speed up a couple notches, you know? But he's doing all right with it. Just kind of helping him out. Good job, buddy. Good job. You know, obviously if you wanted to use a treat to kind of keep them steered ahead, you could do that. Now, oh! Now once I pause it, I do want to make sure that they're waiting until they're released off of it, obviously, right? As opposed to it stops, just hop off and go run somewhere else. Just practicing that impulse control. If it is a command, right, being on this, obviously. Okay. You're free. So that in a nutshell is like a fairly surefire way where at least your first session, like working with any sort of treadmill training or anything, you're not going to run into any major roadblocks with it, you know? So that's kind of the sequence in which I generally do something like that. What's he up to?
He's been really good. I mean, I see a big improvement. So does my girlfriend and family.
Yeah.
Just like some minor things, like just containing his excitement on the bed.
Yeah.
And like staying on the bed. Like,
Sure.
Getting off early.
Yeah.
This down.
A little excitable.
Luca, down. Luca, down.
Yeah.
Containing excitement.
Sure.
But no, I mean, he's been really good though.
Good. Yeah, the one thing I would say right off the rip, just pertaining to like the braking command and stuff when he gets excited, be a little more consistent and steady with continuing to give that correction until he gets into command, right?
Gotcha.
So right there, he got up,
Yeah.
and instead of correcting right away, you told him down, right? Then he didn't down, then you corrected him, right?
Right.
Then he still didn't down, and then you told him down again instead of giving another correction, right?
Gotcha.
So just smoothing that whole sequence out with things if we give that initial command, right? And at that point, he's in command, right? Like right now he's in command. So anything aside from like if you were to pop up right now, I wouldn't repeat down, I would give the correction, then repeat down, right?
That's another big thing is just me working on all the commands too and the corrections.
They're very hard habits to break sometimes when you look at like, wow, like I've repeated commands my entire life, right? Like, or if he didn't listen on the first one, I gave a lot of body language help or things like that, you know?
Yeah.
And they could be very tough habits to break. So as long as you're aware of them, you know, you'll see yourself continue to get better and better with it. I remember when I first started getting into this, I used to have this horrible habit of like if one of my dogs did something wrong, instead of telling them no for it, I would use their name, right? So I would...
No. Luca, down.
All right, and then the second side of things is right there. Did you tap your button when you said no?
No, I forgot to do that.
Ah, okay, right. So why don't you tell him no and correct again?
No.
There you go.
Down.
Perfect. So again, little pieces of the sequence. All those little things, as you get better with that, you'll see him get better with that. Right? Because I always say dog training, it's like a language, right? So if only one party knows the language really well and the other person is not doing it as fluently, obviously you're not going to see the conversation be as smooth overall amongst you guys. So, but again, you're aware of it. So, but yeah, so I would have this bad habit of like saying their name, so they would like jump or do something like that, and I'd go like Vera, right? Like, and I would give freebies like that constantly because every time I did that, she would stop doing it, right? But she never actually got a correction for it, right? So it was like constantly just kind of interrupting it. But I never saw an inhibition of the behavior, right? I never saw it actually reduce because it's like I was basically saying like you could do that until you hear me say Vera, right?
Yeah. Right.
So it's the same concept with them, right? If he breaks this command and we tell him down, even if he gets right back into position, we're telling him you could hold it until you don't want to hold it anymore, and then you could break it until I tell you down again, right? So just little things like that. You'll see those are going to be the key points as far as getting them past some of those last couple hurdles.
Yeah.
So cool. Is there anything, even like nitpicky little things you would say outside of just containing the excitement and some of the overall communication you've had any issues with?
Yeah, I guess like, I don't know. Even today we were practicing some downstays in this like big like grassy baseball field. And like I would get him to go down and then I'd drop it, walk away. And I was doing him like pretty far. So I just wanted him to practice from far recall. A couple times he would just get up like on his own.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Like I don't know if he's just like anticipating it.
So that's we actually ironically were just talking about that earlier today. So you know, it's not that it's wrong to like put your dog in a down stay and walk all the way over there and like call him to you, right? But if you find yourself doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row, yeah, he's going to start anticipating. And what you'll do is you'll constantly be having either a sloppy recall or a sloppy downstay, right? Because if he's guessing and I'm patterning in, I put you in this down, I walk over here, I turn around, then I call you. What's going to start happening is he's going to start cueing off of the earlier stages of things. So what'll happen is I'll walk away, and then you'll start noticing when I stop and stare at him, he'll get up and start running over, predicting that come is gonna precede that, right? So I try to break those cycles as much as possible. And again, you can work it every now and then, but like in a training session, 1 out of every 6 or 7 repetitions, I'll do that.
Okay.
You know? And the rest of them, I'm going to go back and release him so that I'm really kind of nurturing that calm, stable state of mind when I leave him somewhere, you know? Because really, if you looked at like what's more important, that he comes flying out of his downstay over to me or that he stays in one spot, the staying in one spot is going to be a little bit more important than that. You know what I mean?
For sure. It was definitely the anticipation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was definitely after we did it a few
Sure.
times.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I get it. And
Yeah.
He's like, I'm just going to take off.
Yeah.
And run over to you.
And you know, we could work on like intentionally practicing and breaking some of that cycle if we've accidentally created some of it, right? But I'm not going to be very firm on it. Like honestly, like if that were the case, like let's say I accidentally created this pattern that I put my dog in a bed, I walk here, I look at them and I call them, and they start triggering off. Every time I look at them, they start getting up and running over to me. I'm not really going to like hammer them for that necessarily, but what I might do is I might work a couple of repetitions where I practice that picture and just help him back where I need to, right? So I'll put him in that bed stay, I'll walk over, I'll look at him. If he breaks it, I'll just take him back and put him back on. I'm not worried about a big correction for that or anything, right? And then I'll repeat that enough times until he realizes, oh, I just need to stay stable, right? Because it's not a motivation issue. We don't have to give a big correction because he's trying to do the right thing.
Right.
He's just doing the wrong thing, right? So we're just kind of channeling it and creating a little bit of clarity for him through doing that.
Yeah, I would say like some of that, maybe it is just him anticipating again,
Yeah.
like the bed stays where, I remember like when we were working,
Yeah.
You were saying like go to the bed
Yes.
to release him.
Yeah.
And like we've been doing that, and I've been like teaching my girlfriend to do that
Sure.
too. But sometimes I think he is just like anticipating it, because like when one of us will come home, the other person will have him go on the bed.
Yeah.
You know, be calm until
Good.
we come in.
It's a good pattern.
And then we'll both sit on the couch and like wait a little bit. And like both times we've done it this week, like he's kind of like just broken over. 'Cause he's
Moseyed
so
off.
excited.
Oh yeah.
And then I go back, put him back
Yeah.
on the bed.
Now that I would say is less anticipation. Like maybe he's anticipating, I want to go over and say hi to dad. But that I would categorize more as disobedience, right? He knows he should stay in that bed, but
Yeah.
he really wants to come over to you. You know what I mean? Where in the other example, if you put him in a downstay and then you go do a recall, that's not he really wants to be over to you. It's he knows, he thinks you want him to come over to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just, it's a little bit different there.
Okay.
So that example in the house, like if one of you is doing the bed stay while the other is coming home, that I would give bigger corrections for. All right, well, let's do this. Today what we'll do is we'll prioritize our duration commands. We'll work some downstays, we'll work some bed stays, stuff like that.
Yep.
And we'll kind of see what we get.
Really good on walks.
Good.
Even just like, I just feel way more confident even just like playing fetch in the yard. Just
Yeah.
on the ball, like knowing he'll come back.
Yeah,
or
sure.
At least stay down, even if he sees another dog. or person
Yes,
walk by,
that's great.
which is definitely like, huge.
Just feeling confident that we have the control over the dog if we need it. That's really the important thing, right? Because we do all this training because we want to give our dog freedom, right? I want to be able to go to the park and let him run around. Or we had a client I worked with yesterday who finished a board and train a couple days before him. You could put him into a down.
Luca down.
And then once you drop the leash and leave him there. We had a client that went home like a day or two before him that did their first follow-up yesterday. And, same deal. He was like, yeah, we were able to go to the creek and like the dog's never swam before because he could never be off a leash.
Yeah.
And he was able to take him off and let him run around and he went swimming and just had the time of his life, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things we want to be able to do. And it's, I always say it's not that we're trying to create like robots out of these dogs by any means, but I need to know if I need immediate compliance that I can get it so I can give you all that freedom. You know what I mean?
For sure. Like
That's really what it's all about.
Our neighbors next to us both have dogs, and the one they let her dog out, who's like a puppy German Shepherd, and
Yeah.
we were throwing the ball around. He didn't even really care.
Sure.
Which like before, he would have definitely like as soon as he saw another dog, he
Yeah.
bolted over to say hi or something.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he was perfect. And
That's
even
awesome.
today when we were in that big field, there was other people with dogs, but
Yeah.
he was great. He didn't even pay attention because he was focused on me.
That's awesome. Just from theirs if we need to.
No.
Perfect.
No.
All right, so give him a second there. We're gonna make a couple adjustments with that. So adjustment number one, try to nix the body language. So don't do the down like this,
Oh, yeah.
because that's just distracting for them in the end of the day, which is verbal command, right?
Yeah.
Once you give that verbal command, you can give them a minute to do it, right? So it's not that I'm looking to see that, like, as I'm saying the word down, he's flying into position. I just need to see that he's processing that command that I gave him and ultimately working his way into position, right? And then in between your corrections, you can give him an extra second to figure out what he needs to do.
Gotcha.
So,
Give you more time to.
yeah, so give your command, right? So Luca down, then just let it breathe for a minute, regardless of if he's done it or not yet. If he does it, fantastic, drop your leash and walk away.
Yeah.
If he doesn't do it, no, tap down. and give him another second. Let it breathe for a minute. If he still doesn't do it, no, tap down, right? Just nice and smooth with all of it. That's what we're looking for. Beautiful. And then one last thing, like right there, he did it fine, obviously, but when you give that command, stop moving, right? Because you said down, and you were still moving. So that could give a mixed message also of like, wait, do you want me to follow you, or do you want me to stabilize, right?
Gotcha.
So when we give that cue, nice and neutral, we don't want to be giving any sort of confusing body language signals or anything like that.
Yeah, it's something I never really thought about or think about.
Sure.
But I could see how that'd be confusing for him.
Yeah. Well, when we're at this stage in things where it's like he's doing well with you, right? You have pretty good control over him. These are kind of those like nitpicky, fine details that in the big picture go a long way as far as helping him out, you know?
Yeah. Do you ever really correct for barking? Like if you think it's becoming excessive?
Give me a context.
Just like if he's hyped up, you know, like maybe just wants to play.
Sure.
And is just trying to communicate that or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Barking's an interesting one because I don't get so freaking crazy and complicated with it where it's like there's 27 different reasons why a dog would bark or this or that, but like there are different kinds of barks, right? Like you have your obviously like defensive barking towards things like outside of the house or on the leash or things like that. That stuff I would definitely correct for. I don't see any reason why he needs to be doing that, obviously.
Even like someone walking outside the house?
Yes. Yeah, like if somebody's walking by my house and my dogs were to start barking out the window at them, I wouldn't allow that. That's not his job. He doesn't need to worry about what they're doing. They're not, paying any mind to him, right? It's a slippery slope with that one, right? Then you have your like demand barking, which is like, it's a conscious, I'm trying to get you to do something. You know what I mean? Like I'm deliberately barking at you to make you go pick up that ball or make you pet me or any of those types of things. Or we'll see sometimes like if we're having a conversation, some dogs will just come over and start barking at you because they want to be a part of that. I generally will correct that also because I don't like that state of mind, right? But then you have like the third kind, which is just like, I'm aroused and I'm excited and we're doing something fun and I'm barking a little bit, right? That one I'm not as concerned about. Again, it's contextual, right? But like Vinny, my Malinois, very high drive dog, like sometimes like when I get home from work and I let him out of his crate and we're going outside, he's like just so pumped to be out of his crate and going outside to go to the bathroom that he like looks at me, he's like, arr, 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 right? Like he'll let out a couple barks. And I'm not worried about that.
Excited.
You know what I mean? He's just pumped up. Like he's not trying to get me to do something. He's just stimulated and letting out some noise, right? If there was a situation that was similar to that where it was problematic, like obviously he can't be doing that as we're walking into a store or something like that, then what I would need to do is look at not the barking necessarily, but why is he getting so excited going into this place, right? And what can I do to shift that association? So let's say like, you put him in a bed stay when guests are coming over the house, right? And he holds the bed stay fine, but he's barking while he's on the bed stay, right? I'm not necessarily going to correct for that, but I am going to look at, he's getting way too pumped up when people are coming over right now. Maybe we need to start making it a little more boring for him when people are coming over, right? And that could be I leave him on the bed for longer. It could mean he holds it for 25, 30 minutes when people are coming over. It could mean once I release him from it, I tell my guests, just don't like get them all riled up, right? It could be a number of different things, but I would look to shift the association of like, why is he getting so amped up in those types of contexts? Then like kind of the other kind of barking you have is like, I call it like the startle bark, right? So like if you were to walk, I don't want to make it seem like my dogs don't ever bark, right? They're dogs, right? But if you were to come to my door and my dogs weren't expecting it and like knock on it or ring the doorbell or something, like they're going to bark a couple times, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of a natural response that they have. But I do expect after they're startled and let out that bark or two that they focus back in on me because I don't want it to be a prolonged thing, right? But yeah, barking at people walking by, I teach my dogs, we got a lot of windows in our house where they could see all sorts of shit going on outside. And I tell them, you guys got to ignore everything going on out there.